Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. Simplify life with diabetes. By Inhaled Insulin, fast in, fast out fits your lifestyle. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, a conversation with Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayer. He joins me from the American Diabetes Association's scientific sessions with new G7 information, a response to Abbott's Libre 3 approval, addressing rumors about acquisitions, and a lot more. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I am always so glad to have you along. You know, we aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. We've been talking a lot this year about Dexcom and about the G7. I've had them on a couple of times already. And when the invitation came out from the company to talk to Kevin at the ADA scientific sessions, I hesitated for a moment because what is left to talk about until the G7 is approved? Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? There had been some news stories about Dexcom, reports that they had refuted about the possibility of Dexcom buying Insulet. And as always, when I put this in the Facebook group, you all had a lot of questions for them. So we decided to go ahead and do this interview. And of course, I'm not sorry. It's always great to get more information from a topic that is this popular and this anticipated, not just for you as you listen, but for me in my home. We use Dexcom. Benny has worn one. We started on the G4 Platinum back in 2013 when he had just turned 9 years old. In fact, a Facebook memory popped up recently. I'll put this in the Facebook group too. It was 2 years later, and he had, in my words, finally moved the Dexcom to his arm. Still not FDA approved for use in arm, but we wanted to rotate it around. We were so excited. He was really proud of himself, and I think he has just rotated arms ever since with the occasional excursion to different parts of his body when that is more practical, things like wrestling or other situations. I say all that, if you're new, to give you some perspective, because boy, when we do these Dexcom or any new technology shows, we always get a lot of new listeners. And if you are new, my son was diagnosed with type 1 right before he turned 2, and he is now 17. He is just finishing his junior year of high school. All right, couple of quick things you need to know about this interview. Kevin Sayer is at the ADA Scientific Sessions Conference in New Orleans. I am not. I am home. I got a virtual press pass this year because I am finishing my book and I had no time to get there. Plus, my daughter goes to school in New Orleans and she just came home. We were just there. Kevin and I spoke on Saturday, June 4th. This episode is set to go live on June 7th. We recorded this over Zoom, and so I turned all the video on. You can watch that if you prefer. It's pretty much the exact same interview, but it is over on our YouTube channel. We do have a YouTube channel, and I will link that up in the show notes as well. As always, I do like to acknowledge that Dexcom is a sponsor. You heard that little mention at the top of the show, and they will have an ad later on. They don't tell me what to say or what to ask, but it is important to be clear about our relationship. Longtime listeners know the deal. I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing me say that. But it really is important that we disclose that kind of thing. And before we get to the interview, I have info from another sponsor. And I know you have a lot of questions about Afrezza, because every time I mention it, the emails, the DMs, come on in. So what is it all about? Afrezza is an ultra-rapid-acting mealtime insulin. You breathe it in using an oral inhaler. Afrezza gives you the flexibility to eat when you want while providing proven blood sugar control. Afrezza's ultra-rapid action allows you to inhale your insulin right when food arrives, even unexpectedly, so you can be spontaneous but still in control without the need for injections at mealtime. Find out more, see if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium, and is not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you ever smoked, ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you were pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Kevin, welcome back to Diabetes Connections. I wish I were in New Orleans. It's so exciting to have the ADA scientific sessions back in person. How's it going?
You know what? It'll be a great few days for us. There's all sorts of presentations and posters showing the benefits, continued benefits of real-time CGM, Stacey. What we've thought forever is truly coming to fruition as we look at the outcomes generated by this technology and truly the things we continue to learn as it advances. So it'll be a good several days for us. We're looking forward to the show.
What do you think the headline will be? I mean, I know there's press releases and there's posters. What do you think the headline's going to be out of this conference for Dexcom?
I think the first headline is going to be, we all got together again. And I think that's going to make everybody very happy. I think the headline for Dexcom is continued growth and progress. And as you look at our partners with the integrated systems, the data that will be presented by them, and just the outcomes they're generating, the excitement for Omnipod 5, for example, in the world, and continued growth with Tandem and what they're doing, that'll be very good. You know, our old mantra, CGM first, really doesn't even have to be a mantra anymore. Kids leave the hospital if they're diagnosed on a Dexcom. And we had a family speak at our town hall meeting for our company a while ago. We often do that. And when they had 2 children with type 1 diabetes, and the first one, it took them 7 years for the physician to recommend a CGM. And then lo and behold, their second child got diagnosed, and that child went to the pharmacy and picked it up after the diagnosis. That's how much this has changed. And I think that's the continual theme here. Forget all the noise and all the other stuff. I think for Dexcom, that's the theme, that we're truly entrenched in the middle of all this rather than trying to justify our presence.
I want to come back to that, leaving the hospital with a Dexcom, in just a couple of minutes. But I would like to ask you about your partners with Insulet, with Tandem, that kind of thing. The biggest question I got was how soon, right? The G7 is not yet FDA approved, and everyone wants to know how soon will it be integrated?
Actually, I have one.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you were going to break the news here. That
I have one right here. I can show you the box. I won't show any more than that. We have to get it approved. We're working on the engineering side with both companies now. I can't speak to their timelines. I know we're devoting tremendous resources to both, and we'll get it done as quickly as we can. You know, when you get a new product approved like this, there are cycles you have to go through, not only on the engineering side, but also on the approval side from the reimbursement contracts and everything else. So I'm hopeful that we can line a lot of those things up and both our partners can go very quickly. In the meantime, the best way to get ready for a G7 is to use a G6 with these systems and get used to them and get used to treating that type of treatment. And then when G7 comes, it'll just be that much better.
Is G7, and I believe you've answered this before, but G7 has been submitted asking for the iCGM designation. In other words, there shouldn't be
we don't ask. We only submit that way. And so it absolutely should be an iCGM product. There shouldn't be any doubt there.
To clarify, I'm saying ask, you're saying submit, potato.
Yeah. We submitted under those guidelines.
Got it. That question.
Full iCGM, one of the half-hour warm-up, and off it goes.
We have talked quite a bit this year, which is great, and I appreciate that, about the features of the G7. And it was great to talk to your CTO, Jake Leach, just a couple of weeks ago. Are there any features, and I know things may change through the submission process, any features that you are announcing at ADA that we haven't heard yet?
I don't think we have any G7 features we're announcing that are different. We're still somewhat limited due to the fact that it's still under review. It has been launched internationally in other geographies, so we can't talk about it, but we don't really have any new features that we're announcing here. We spoke a lot to the features. I think the most important feature is going to be, the reaction we get when people wear it. The patients we've had so far in the UK who've worn this system, the reaction's overwhelming. And those who've worn CGM before, the reaction's even more overwhelming than those that are new to it, because they feel the experience is that much enhanced over what they've used before. Everything from the new receiver, which is smaller, but easier to use and just a nice product. And, much to my surprise, when we went to the phone, I thought the receiver would be dead. It isn't. There are a number of patients who don't want their phone being their medical device. And so the receiver reaction has been very good. The ability, again, our continued ability to pair to multiple devices. The G7 pairs can pair to up to 3 devices at the same time. When we come out, we won't have that third, but in the not too distant future, we'll have direct Apple Watch with G7. This has the Bluetooth capability of doing that. So you could theoretically be paired to your pump, your phone, and directly to your Apple Watch and use the G7 system and input directly to the G7 software, not just one. And that is some wonderful technology. I think people will love that as well.
And to clarify, could you then, I don't know why you would want to do this, but could you pair to your Tandem X2 pump, to your phone, and to a receiver, 3 devices, as you said?
Yep, you could pick the receiver versus the Apple Watch as your third one, yeah.
Okay, because right now you're limited to two devices, 1 minute.
It's limited to 2, and G7 will eventually support 3.
Eventually. Okay. Like I said, we've talked a lot this year, and we've talked about a lot of features and a lot of expectations. I have some little nitty-gritty questions that my listeners sent.
Go for it.
Yeah, let's go through that. One of the questions came up about Apple CarPlay and Android Car compatibility. Is that something that is going to be with the Direct to Watch? I'm not familiar with any of that. I don't really use it that much.
I don't have a good answer to that question. I don't know. I'd have to ask somebody. Maybe I could have our team follow up here if there's some news, but for now, I can't answer that one. I don't know.
Okay. And I have another one from the Facebook group, and I want to read this because I think you'll get a kick out of some of it. Well, I'll make a kick out of all of it. We'll see. Okay. So she first says, I want to let you know that I have used Dexcom since the month the original 7 came out. That was 15 years ago. We got shirts. I still have it. The shirts say 7 days without CGM makes 1 week. And 1 week makes one, the pronoun WEAK. So it makes 1 week. I love that.
We had a marketing department yet when we did that shirt, but that's okay.
But the question was, and I thought the question was terrific. This is Jim. I'm so sorry, Jim. I changed who you are. Jim says, we all know that the scanners at the airport won't hurt the Dexcom. Dexcom says they haven't tested this. Have they tested airport scanners? Most US airport scanners are the same. Why not test them? It is a pain to go through the airport. Do us a favor and make it easier. Right back to Kevin, but first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Omnipod. And when you're deciding on a brand of insulin pump, there are a lot of things to think about, especially if you've never used a pump before. It can seem overwhelming. There are a lot of choices, and you want to make the right decision. That's why I am so excited to tell you about the Omnipod Dash free trial. Curious about trying an insulin pump or seeing what life without tubes is all about? You can now try Omnipod Dash free for 30 days. The trial comes with no commitment or obligation. Not right for you? No problem. Terms and conditions apply. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo, or go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo. For full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions, also visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Now back to Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayer.
Again, I don't have an answer to that question. I can tell you that a scanner has never detected a sensor on me. But I have been randomly selected for the search and have somebody go up on my arm and go, what is this? And I've had to explain what it is.
Yeah.
But no, we haven't. If we're not required to test on scanners, we're probably not going to do extra testing. We know they don't hurt them.
We have gone through many, many, many airport scanners with zero issues on Betty. But that's an interesting one. I guess that's a good question because you can test for things, but you're not looking for a negative, right?
We test all sorts of things to get this product through the regulatory process. There's very rigorous testing it goes through.
I made a face because what have you tested that we haven't talked about? Like what's something?
I can't go into all those.
No.
But I'll give you one example. One of the features of G6 was we resolved with G5 and G4, we had acetaminophen that would affect the sensor's performance. And we changed the chemical composition of the membranes to whereby the interference didn't happen. So we do a tremendous amount of testing on various things that could interfere with the sensor's accuracy and performance. And one of the reasons we have the only ICGM designation for AID is because we block all those things. So there isn't a risk that if you take something, or at least not a known risk, given all the compounds we've tested against, that they will affect the sensor's performance. And that testing gets very involved and very detailed and in very big numbers. It was an interesting thing for me to learn, but it's very rigorous.
Well, you've skipped ahead because I have a couple other questions I'll circle back to, but a little bit of an elephant in the room. And with testing with things that keep a product from getting AID and ICGM, well, just AID certification. Abbott Libre recently, Libre 3 came through, did not get this. I don't know if they submitted for it. We're going to talk to them in the future. My understanding is that they have issues with vitamin C. There may be other issues. But let me ask you about Abbott. And really what I want to ask you about is Insulet. What I mean by that is, so Abbott is this huge worldwide player. In the US, Dexcom is a much bigger player with CGM. Everybody thought when we heard this rumor report a couple of weeks ago from Bloomberg, Dexcom buying Insulet, this makes a lot of sense because Abbott is so big worldwide. How are you guys going to compete and continue? You knocked it down. But in the report, the quote from Dexcom says, we're not going to do any merger. The initial report was an acquisition of Insulet. So let me ask you, Kevin, straight up. Acquisition is not a merger. Are plans to acquire Insulet off the table as well?
No, our comment, we stand by our comment. We're not in acquisition or merger talks with anyone right now. And we felt the need before this show to quelch all the rumors. And so that's why we did that. We typically would not comment on a rumor, but given the fact that there's the show this week, we did not want our team spending all their time talking about this, nor Insulet's team talking about this every day. Merger and acquisition are somewhat similar, just different ways to do a transaction. But we're happy with our plans and where we're headed. We have taken on the challenge of scale internationally, and it is a steep hill. We've gone from, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, only $100 million in revenue internationally to almost $700 million this year. If you look at the Wall Street breakdown of our numbers, forget ours. That's a lot of growth and a lot of infrastructure to build. We've had some real breakthroughs internationally. We've got some really neat strategies. For example, we've taken our G6 system and we've created a new product line called Dexcom One, which is a different experience. It is not an AID experience. It's not connect to multiple things. We're not going to have share and follow on this system. It's a very simple CGM. We've priced it at a lower price point because it doesn't solve all the problems that the G series problem solves. And that's enabled us to broaden the use of our product to more people who have this covered in other countries and get it reimbursed. So this dual product and this product portfolio strategy is something we're going to pursue very much over the next 4 or 5 years, because we think glucose measurement is valuable for everybody, but there are different use cases. And the best use case, particularly in some of these other markets, is where it can be reimbursed and where it can be paid for. And so we're now participating in tenders in Europe. That's the reimbursement process with the government, where we're not able to participate before because we've got a lower price offering. And there's still, the other category of patients who want all the features of the G series or who need them, in fact, all the time. So we've done that in Europe. That's one of our growth strategies. Some of the other things we've done internationally. This year, for example, we integrated the acquisition of our Australian distributor. And CGM has now been approved with full coverage in Australia. G6 has, and that has been a wonderful, acquisition for us because we did pay cash for that business, as said in all of our disclosures. But that's going to be wonderful for patients in Australia, and it gives us the opportunity to really tell our story as best we can. Dexcom as a company has been very thoughtful in preparing for the future. As you look at our balance sheet, for example, we have a significant amount of cash to continue to grow this business. We've invested in G7 equipment, G6 equipment, and also building a third plant in Malaysia. Over 3 years, we're going to probably spend over $1 billion getting ready for the future and being able to build this technology and take it all over the world in several different forms. So we're very excited about our future. That's a very long answer to your question.
It was kind of a meandering question, so I think
I covered a lot of points that I think are very important.
One of the things that Abbott also announced recently, and we've talked about this before, was that they are starting trials for glucose and ketone censoring in the same sensor. And when you and I talked about this back in January, you had said that was fine. You were happy to let Abbott lead and see if there was a market for that, which I think was the quote. Is Dexcom still feeling that way, or are you thinking of incorporating other types of sensors? You had mentioned that, you're capable of doing that.
No, we do look at other analytes, and we are evaluating other analytes for a sensor system. And again, we'll see if it's useful. I guess my question for you, Stacey, is if you're on an AID system and doing well, shouldn't you be okay with glucose values? This is what I want to try and figure out as we go through it.
I think it's a great question. I really do. No, I don't. I'll tell you what, if the price went up, I would not be happy because I don't think I need to monitor my son for ketones every moment of the day. Certainly not on 5-minute cycles.
But at the end of all,
but others may disagree, right?
In the process, I always encourage our engineers and our commercial team to go through. I've now boiled my management style down to one simple question: what problem are we solving? And if we do an analysis on this and find it solves a significant problem, it's something we would pursue with much greater vigor and go faster with. We do test other analytes. We've worked with ketone sensors on our platform. We've looked at multi-sensor type things on our platform. We've actually even hired some others to help us with more of our advanced technology and expand that group. Some incredibly bright young minds have just joined our company to look at some of these things. So is it something that's going to happen tomorrow? No. And, we've got our biggest launch in history with G7 coming. So we'll focus on that and do that very well. You'll hear from us in other areas, I'm sure, in the not too distant future. But for now, we're good where we are.
Talk to me a little bit about iOS app updates, that kind of thing. I've been getting a little bit of feedback from the community, people saying, I tried to update my iOS and then my Dexcom didn't work and it's not compatible. And, I feel like it works very well for us. We're on the latest phone with the latest iOS with no issues. I have a 13 Pro and I think I'm on 15.5 as we're speaking. Are there issues with iOS updates and Dexcom?
I don't believe that there are, but I could check and follow up more. I do know that, look, the one thing I've learned about phones and everybody's phones and upgrades and all these things, everybody's phone is configured differently and works differently. We test with the iOS upgrades when we have access to them. And I think often we have a policy, if we haven't tested and there's an upgrade, we'll say we haven't tested against this upgrade with a notice. But we keep up as fast as we can. It's easier to keep up in the iOS world than the Android world, just given the number of phones and the number of different versions of Android that there are. But we do our best to keep up. I think it's a cost and a capability that's very unnoticed by the outside world. We didn't grow up a software company. We didn't grow up an app company. We grew up a sensor company. We got really good at making sensors. And so navigating the transition from medical device to consumer health and apps has been a transition for us. And it's not simple, but we get there and we continue to upgrade our processes when we can. Our software team is now the biggest team in our R&D function. And we've added a lot of wonderful people and been very flexible and thoughtful about doing this. We stay on it as best we can, Stacey.
The move from G5 to G6 was really interesting for people who'd used it for a while in terms of sensor errors or sensor sensitivity, I guess I should say, right? Because with the G5, you'd get those question marks that kind of keep trucking. The G6, very simply, layperson terminology here, the G6, it was approved for dosing insulin. So if the transmitter and sensor had a little bit of confusion between them, the transmitter would basically say, hey, I don't know what this is. You can't dose for it. Similar in the G7, or is it, how is that kind of stuff working in terms of sensor errors?
Many of these things are driven by ICGM, and we have to display values that are statistically significant and appropriate for automated insulin delivery. And it also makes for a more accurate, better experience for users over time. The question will be, and with all new products, we've tested G7 more than anything we've ever tested by a very, very long way. But the fact is, whenever you launch a new product, you learn something that you didn't know. That's why we're doing an extensive limited launch in the UK now. We will do an extensive limited launch in the UK, in the US after approval with users. And, we go through a very detailed process of getting feedback and finding out what's going on. There's literally there was a daily, now it's more like twice a week report from our users on G7 as to what we've learned and what we've seen and what we can fix and do better. So we're better at that. We're better identifying and correcting those early things. And over time, the G7 performance is going to be spectacular. G6 performing right now. I mean, Stacey, right now, our NPS scores are higher than they've ever been in the history of our company.
What's an NPS score?
Net Promoter Score. So on a 1 to 10 scale, would you recommend this product or would you not? I mean, our scores are over 7, and the only people in that category are companies like Costco and Apple. Our customers have never been happier. You get the occasional outlier who's unhappy. In most cases, they're not unhappy with the product. They'd be unhappy with the reimbursement or distribution process more than anything else. And the second one is there was a tech support card that just didn't go perfectly, but we now have really good procedures for that.
I have to ask you 2 questions from what you said when you're talking about the most extensive testing. compression low testing? I know that's tough to do in a lab setting.
Yeah, I don't have test results for that. You can compress any sensor if laid on at the proper angle. It is smaller. Our anticipated belief would be there would be less, but it's only anticipated at this point in time. We have ideas for that that involve all sorts of other science. Over the next couple of years, this might be a good podcast for us to talk about.
All right. And then you said limited launch. What does that mean?
We'll take a group of several hundred or a few thousand customers, go to G7 first. They'll use it. And we have a very detailed process whereby we go through and ask questions and monitor the performance of the device and how things are going, what features are good, what features are bad, what we would change in the user guide to make things more simple or better over time. So we did a limited launch with G6 before we went full on into the universe. We'll do a bigger launch with G7 because we think it's going to affect a lot more people. So that's a standard practice at our company to do that. Yeah. Just to
because my listeners, they're going to say, how do I get that? Can you sign up? You
can't sign up. Well, we have internal processes for figuring that out.
Got it. At the very beginning, you mentioned the family that had gone 7 years before they got a Dexcom for their first child, and then immediately got one for unfortunately, the next child that was diagnosed. I don't know if this is an okay question to ask a CEO, but we've talked for years, so I'm going to ask it anyway. I feel like sometimes you give people the Dexcom, not you personally, but sometimes people get diabetes technology and they don't always get the education that needs to come with it. I run a very large group for Charlotte area parents of type 1s. They come home from the hospital. They don't yet understand diabetes. They're in my group saying, what does this arrow mean?
What do I do?
That kind of thing. Wait. And then they're really terrified to go a moment without it. Are you guys almost a victim of your own success in terms of the marketing of this and in terms of getting it out there so quickly? Because if anything goes wrong, there's a lot of panic.
I don't know that we're a victim. I think I couldn't imagine encountering what you have encountered in your life without a CGM. I just couldn't. I think what we have is a situation where we're learning to treat this condition better, and we're learning to treat it with more information from the very beginning. And what has been created, and I will agree with you on this, then if you go without it, if you've never had anything else, there is panic that sets in because you were never trained to do anything else other than that. I think it speaks very favorably of Dexcom's mission and how much we've accomplished over the years. I view it as a huge win.
Well, I know we're out of time, but I really appreciate you joining me. Have a great time in New Orleans. And I can give you some restaurant recommendations off the air.
Okay. Take care, Stacey. Thanks. And goodbye, everybody.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
More information, of course, at diabetes-connections.com. I will be linking up more information about the G7 and about other stuff that may come out of the ADA scientific sessions. As I said, I wasn't going to do a deep dive into the G7 because we have covered it before. If you are new, we've covered it a lot in the last 12 months. I have talked to Dexcom 5 separate times. And I know you can't get enough. We can never get enough information. But I felt like I didn't need to ask the same questions because we've covered them before. The direct to watch is not going to be released immediately when the system comes out. There is going to be a shorter warm-up time. It is a smaller physical piece on the body, that kind of thing. If you are new, if this is your first time hearing me, I don't want you to think I'm shortchanging things. Go to diabetes-connections.com. Use the search box on the upper right-hand side. You can search Dexcom or G7 or Kevin Sayer and find all of the information that we have covered in the last year alone. It's been a whole bunch. They're always so accessible, which I think is terrific, but there is a lot of information. So I wanted to try to cover new ground in the very limited time I get with somebody like this. These CEOs do these interviews and it's just one after the other. And, I'm getting private messages at the very end there. You're out of time. Wrap it up. And, there were a couple of things there that he said he couldn't answer. He would get me more information on. I will follow up on that. But I think some of that's really interesting, especially the airport question. And I'm going to link up that T-shirt that Jim mentioned. I'll put that in the Facebook group as well so you can see that photo. I thought that was cute marketing. Kevin didn't seem to care for it too much, but I thought it was very cute. Up next, I want to tell you about where I am going. We have some events coming up. This is really, hopefully, fingers crossed, going to be fun. I can't wait to see people again. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. And one of the most common questions I get is about helping kids become more independent. Those transitional times are really tricky, elementary to middle to high school. you get it. Using the Dexcom makes a big difference for us. It is not all about share and follow, although that's helpful. You think about how much easier it is for a middle schooler to just look at their Dexcom rather than do 4 to 5 finger sticks at school, or for a second grader to just show their care team the number before gym. At one point, Benny was up to 10 finger sticks a day, and not having to do that makes his management a lot easier for him. It's also a lot easier to spot the trends and use technology to give your kids more independence. Find out more at diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. All right, where am I going? I looked at my calendar the other day, and I have one event a month, which hasn't happened in several years. And, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I'm hoping to have many more than that too, especially when the next book comes out, which will be in November. I'm really hoping that 2023 gives me the book tour that I didn't have because of COVID. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I really would love to meet you. And if you're at any of these events, if you're there, please come say hi. Let's connect. So I will be at Friends for Life in July. Very excited about that. That is the annual conference by children with diabetes. It takes place in the hottest spot on earth, Orlando, Florida, in July. It is disgusting, but it is so worth it. I love it. Only for you guys would I go there. Only for Friends for Life. Then in August, Baltimore, I guess that's still pretty hot too in August, the ADCES conference. I say that carefully because this is the Diabetes Educators Conference. Used to be CDEs, now it is ADCES. I'm really excited to be going to that conference. And then in September, Healthy Voices. This is the makeup from 2020. I haven't been to a Healthy Voices conference, I think, for me, since 2017. Met some fabulous people there. Really looking forward to this. Is health advocates from all sorts of different, health advocacy conditions, and not just diabetes, but it's always a great time. I've learned so much. Thrilled to be going to that. And then maybe the regional Friends for Life conference in October. Plus, I'm working on some local and regional stuff that I will announce in just a couple of weeks. So I hope to see you at some of those. If you have a conference in your town, and I can't believe we're talking about this again, later this year, or if you'd like me to come speak next year, the book tour for The World's Worst Diabetes Mom is going to fire up in January. So if you'd like me to come to your town, please drop me a line, Stacey at diabetes-connections.com, and we will make it happen. All right, thank you so much to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.